Like many of you, I was surprised to find out yesterday that Chris Borland of the San Francisco 49ers, coming off a very good rookie campaign that indicated that his best years were clearly ahead of him and he could be a potential star for many years to come, in the middle of that 49ers defense, has decided after one season at the age of 24 to walk away from the game of professional football. You know, for 49ers fans, it's got to be a really tough time. Not only do you lose Patrick Willis to retirement, in part because he's tired of the abuse and pounding his body is taking playing in the National Football League, and he wants to be able to enjoy his life later on. Now the guy you were pointing to replace Patrick Willis, to say, hey, it's not so bad if this great player leaves because we've got another great one in the wings, he's left too after one whole season. And of course you know what's going to come with this. The NFL and sports-related media are going to seize upon this opportunity and pounce. And they're going to try and advance agendas. They are going to sit there and perpetuate narratives that are all basically a big bunch of bullshit. Flat out. Chris Borland's retirement is a surprise. Yes. It's a bit of a big deal. Yes. But it's no big deal for the NFL, I assure you. Let's start off with this. You know what's going to come. A lot of people are going to talk about how this represents a new generation of athlete and new understanding about the violent nature of the game of professional football and the long-term health consequences of potentially playing the game. There's going to be talk about how this is bad and how this is going to represent a seismic shift in the way the NFL and the game of football is viewed by the American sporting public and young athletes looking to play a sport and perhaps looking to play professional football. You're going to hear a lot of crap talking about how this is going to continue to be a bigger problem. It's going to continue to get worse, and someday, somehow, this is going to negatively impact the league because fewer and fewer talented athletes are going to choose to play professional football. Balderdash. If any of you are buying into this logic, if any of you are believing this crap, please stop and check yourself right now. Do not fall for this phony BS that the sports and NFL media is going to try and pound down your throat as an attempt to advance an agenda, advance some propaganda, all for the concept of sensationalism, therefore creating attention, interest, ratings, money. You get the drill. It's what it's all about. This does not represent some big seismic shift in any fucking thing. This is not something that represents anything bad for the National Football League, no matter how much anybody tries to tell you or spin you otherwise. This is about one guy making a decision about his life and what he wants to do going forward. It is nothing more than that, I assure you. This doesn't represent a seismic shift in any damn thing. One thing that has astounded me in recent years is all of this emphasis and talk and focus on concussions and the long-term impact of those concussions and playing in the National Football League and playing professional football or football in general as a whole. Like this is something new. This is some previously undiscovered phenomenon that all of a sudden has enlightened everybody. You know, I put it this way. Didn't your grandma used to tell you that she didn't want you playing football because it was dangerous? Did you ever think that maybe your grandma knew what the hell she was talking about, and maybe the reason she was telling you that football was a dangerous sport to play potentially was because it was potentially a dangerous sport to play? How the hell did your grandma know, but you didn't? How the hell did our grandmas and great-grandmas and our moms and dads know, but we didn't know? Does that make any sense whatsoever? No. Look at what football is. It is a violent contact collision sport. And this whole notion that it is somehow a surprise that concussions or other long-term health consequences could occur as a result of playing football or playing, especially at the National Football League level, being some type of surprise is completely and totally ludicrous. We know the potential consequences. We know it's a violent physical contact collision sport that could lead to guys having physical ailments and problems down the road. This is not anything new. This is no big surprise. So I'm very surprised why anybody sits there and acts like it's a surprise. This is like sitting there and being surprised that smoking could lead to a lot of potentially bad health consequences, like lung cancer or stroke or high blood pressure or diabetes or whatever the hell, any numerous number of freaking health problems. These are known. These have been documented for years, no matter how much anybody tries to spin it and tell you otherwise. When you make the decision to smoke, and I know for somebody who's battled it off and on over the years, I ultimately made that decision knowing what the potential consequences could be. I didn't need somebody to tell me just how bad they were. I know the consequences. They are there. They are clearly established. Everybody tells you all the time that shit's bad for you. It could kill you. Maybe there's a reason they're telling you, because it is bad for you and it could potentially kill you. Do I need some newfangled scientific study based off of years of previously outdated data to tell me that? No. I did it. I do it, knowing the consequences, and I'm stupid enough to do it anyway. That's what we are as human beings. We are fucking stupid. It shouldn't be any surprise if someday I sit there and have a stroke or have heart disease or get lung cancer because of the fact that I smoked for X number of years. Then I have nobody to blame but my fucking self. I can sit there and blame the tobacco companies for creating an addictive product and a dangerous product to consume. But at the end of the day, they didn't hold the gun to my head to do it. I made that choice. And I have to live with that choice and live with the potential consequences. And I know what the consequences are ahead of time. Same thing for these players as they're coming up through the ranks over the years and they want to play professional football someday. You know what it can do to your body. You know the potential risk, and you do it anyways because it's a dream. It's what you want to do. So it kind of concerns me in a way that somebody like Chris Borland, at the age of 24, all of a sudden now is having this revelation, which I'm sure he's battled with for a long period of time in this decision-making process. I'm sure it's something he's wrestled with, he's tried to grapple with, he's struggled to come to terms with. But he's got this whole notion of now all of a sudden that if he retires at 24, he's going to be so much better off for it years on down the road. It's this whole fear of what could happen. It's this whole fear of what he thinks can happen, being based in part on data collected from players that played 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years ago in a different time, in a different league, in a different sport in a lot of ways. You know, the style of play was different. The viewpoints on many things were different. The safety measures in place were not nearly as stringent or significant as they are now, even if they're not perfect today. I will grant you that. But it's like he's sitting there and he's fearful of what could happen, but isn't even guaranteed to happen. And I'm sorry, but living your life in fear is no way to live your life at all. I'll put it this way. As a former and current runner, yeah, I know I smoke and yet I still run every day. Let me put it to you this way. If you presented me with two options right now, you told me I could sit there and run casually every day as a thing to keep myself in shape, and I could live a quality life until age 75, 80, 85. Or you told me that I could sit there and put my heart and soul into everything for the next 4 to 6 years. And let's say by 2020, yes, miracles could happen at age 39. I'd be in a position where I could potentially run at the Olympics. But putting my body and myself through that for the next 6 years, 5 years, would sit there and create long-term health consequences, as in I would someday need multiple knee replacements, perhaps hip replacements. I would have all types of back problems. Maybe someday it would create problems with my heart, and I would end up living a miserable life from the age of 50 on, and I'd pass away at 65 or 70. Would I be willing to sacrifice all that? Will I be willing to roll the dice? Would I be willing to take that chance with the potential that I could make it to the Olympics? You're goddamn right I would. And I wouldn't bat an eye. And I wouldn't blink. I'd take that chance 100 out of 100 times. So many things in life are about risks. It's about the unknown. It's about uncertainty. You can't let that fear consume you. And I think, if anything, it's troubling that a player like Chris Borland, after playing it at Pee Wee, playing it in middle school, playing it in high school, playing it in college at Wisconsin, all of a sudden now he gets to the NFL. He's finally gotten to the pinnacle. He's finally getting to the point where he can achieve that dream. Now all of a sudden he's come to the realization that he doesn't want it anymore. Now all of a sudden his health is important to him. After all these years of people like your grandma and maybe your parents too telling you the sport is dangerous, all of a sudden there's evidence that clearly indicates that this could potentially be a dangerous sport for your body in the long term. I don't really get it. I really don't. What I really don't get are, again, those people that are going to sit there and try to spin this as some big-time seismic shift for the National Football League and talk about how this is bad for the game and da-da-da. Well, excuse the fuck out of me. We've known for years, one more time, years, that football is a violent collision sport that can potentially damage those that play it long term. Yet, as the sadistic fucks that we are as Americans, we love this sport. We love these violent sports. We can't get enough of them. So this whole notion that all of a sudden, because of the dangers involved with the game, that people are going to start watching, get the fuck out of here. Are you seriously going to tell me, as a fan of the National Football League and a fan of your team, that you're going to stop watching the game, the team that you love, the game that you love, because players have some concussion-related issues 20, 30 years down the damn road when you frankly don't give a fuck about them and their health? Get the fuck out of here. And this whole notion of, well, if you have enough guys like him retire early or choose not to sit there and play football to begin with, okay, then somebody else steps up. It's always next man up when it comes to the National Football League. And I dispute again this whole notion that someday this is going to represent some bad thing for business for the National Football League. All the violence of the NFL, all the idiots doing all the shit off the field when it comes to guns and other crap. People haven't stopped watching. Look at 2014. From a public relations standpoint, this is perhaps the worst year in the history of the National Football League. All the domestic violence shit, yet people still watched. You've got players beating their women's, beating everything, and kids and all that other shit. Probably dogs and cats too. And people still watch. You got teams getting caught up in Deflategate scandals, and people still watched. You get to the freaking Super Bowl with all this talk of concussions and long-term medical consequences of playing the game, domestic violent instances under the microscope to the nth degree, coming out of the yin-yang for the league on all different levels, Deflategate scandals for your marquee team. And what was the consequence and what was the result? A record year for the NFL, including a Super Bowl that was the most watched in history. Jesus fucking Christ. How stupid can people be to sit there and believe this represents any type of seismic shift of any fucking thing whatsoever? If bottom line is one guy making one decision about himself and his life and what he wanted to do. And while I don't understand it, and I don't necessarily agree with it, and frankly I think it's kind of flawed thinking on Chris Borland's part to all of a sudden sit there and decide now he doesn't want to do it once he actually gets there. Fuck, buddy. Who's to sit there and say 20 years from now, all the pounding you had on your body from pee-wee and middle school and high school and college football doesn't ruin your life anyways? But at the same token, who's to sit there and say that if you played the game until you were 30 or 35, that you would have had any significant long-term health consequences? It's that fear of the unknown that is driving them and is consuming them, and I don't think that's any way to live life. I respect his decision, though. He made his choice, and he has to live with it. You know, he's going to have to wrestle with that for the rest of his life. You can sit there and pretend that you're at peace with it now, but he doesn't fucking know. None of us fucking know. He could be sitting there 5 years from now at age 29 thinking about the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Is that really a way to live through life? I'd rather do what I want to do and then someday maybe worry about the consequences than sit there and live my entire life regretting what I didn't do and thinking about what I could have done and should have done. That's what this is about. It's about one guy making one decision that he thought was best for himself, whether it was or not, is up for him ultimately to live with and wrestle with. All this other talk about it's a big deal for the NFL, it ain't a big deal about shit. Because you've had a recent discussion about concussions in over recent years, and it ain't done shit. The NFL is a juggernaut. The NFL is a monster. It is ingrained to the very fiber of our being as Americans. It is who we are. Stupid, sadistic, violent. It's all of that, and that's why we love it so much. And we're not about to sit there and stop watching it because a guy at age 24 decided that he wanted to retire because he was worried about what could happen to him someday. You're not about to have a bunch of kids stop playing football. I don't care what anybody tries to tell you otherwise, just because of the threat of what could potentially happen someday. It just ain't happening. So don't buy into this crap. It's maybe a big deal for Chris Borland, but that's it. I assure you, the beat will go on. The beat will go on. This is no big deal for the NFL, no matter how much any of these idiots in the media try to spin you and tell you otherwise.